Get my geek on, get my geek on. Get my geek on, get my geek on.
We have Alex Ford, who is going to tell us the ins and outs of Adobe, and I guess we'll leave the time over to you.
Cool. So nice to be here. Thank you. So I was excited to come out and talk to you guys. I haven't been able to talk to, I'm sorry, I forget your name again, but I think Anthony, was it Anthony? Jason, you're Jason, that's right. I haven't got to talk to him a lot because I've just been super busy, but I have been really excited to come out and chat with you guys. First, I just kind of wanted to ask some questions about, like, I tend to shoot from the hip. I'm more casual with speaking, so I kind of want to let you guys help me guide the conversation, if that's all right. I'll give you a brief overview on how I got started and everything, but be thinking about questions and stuff that you want to ask and where you want to take the conversation. I'll just kind of let you guys get the answers that you're looking for. But how I started is a little bit untraditional because I actually only went to college for a year and then dropped out. So because I kind of had to do a lot of introspection and learn how I work before I could learn how to actually function in the corporate world. But so I started in 7th grade doing programming. That was my first exposure to code. I didn't know anything more other than over the loudspeaker they said, hey, come after school and make games with us. And that was all I heard. I was like convinced because I was obsessed with video games at the time. And so I went after school and I didn't know what to expect when we started on a language called Microsoft QBasic. Did any of you guys know QBasic? You know QBasic? Anyone else? Has anyone even heard of it? You've heard of it? Okay. QBasic is very old. It was even old at the time I started to learn it, but it was a very simple top-down language that started, it's not object-oriented, which I hope most of you guys know what that means. But yeah, so I started with QBasic, and all I knew was that for like the next 3 years, because the next year I wanted to learn Delphi, and my teacher retired, the after-school teacher, and so the class just disappeared. So I stuck with that for a while and just kept making lots of awesome DOS programs. And then I got into high school and I started .NET and C#. Do any of you guys do Microsoft development with .NET? Yeah? That was the stuff I got started with, and it was a lot of fun. I first started doing some like desktop development with WinForms and stuff like that, and then I got into the web development, which obviously you guys agree is the best development. I started with ASP.NET, so luckily I got in right after ASP, which was Microsoft's first foray into web development, and it was kind of gross. But ASP.NET was a very interesting abstraction over HTTP, over the web. So most of you guys, I'm sure, know how the web works, and you are used to working with GET and POST and all that kind of stuff. But back when I started, it was just trying to emulate WinForms as much as possible. And so I was dragging controls out of a toolbox onto a designer surface that looked nothing like what the browser would actually look like when I would open it up. So it was a really weird abstraction to start with. And so I kind of came from starting out with something that totally didn't represent the web at all, and then moving into, later on, Microsoft ASP.NET MVC. Do you guys know what MVC is? Who knows what Ruby on Rails is? Okay, Ruby on Rails is very centered around the MVC pattern, the model view controller. And it's just a really simple pattern that works really well with HTTP. And we don't need to go into the technical details. That's not what tonight's about. But that was just kind of woke me up. It kind of made me realize that the web is a lot more complicated and a lot more powerful than what I originally thought. Because I was just happy with my little abstractions, dragging controls on a designer, and didn't really understand what was actually going on underneath. And so, like, for instance, I'd drag a grid out of the toolbox and place that on my designer, and then when I would actually open up the browser, the HTML that was there was, I don't know, Microsoft front page, anybody? So I got really sick of that, and I wanted to really get good at HTML and CSS and get down to the bare bones. And I did that just in time because HTML5 started taking off right as I got transitioned into other things. And so now, today, that's kind of the way the industry works, is we have really good front-end frameworks like Angular. I'm sure you guys have heard of Angular, or Knockout, or Backbone, and lots of those front-end frameworks. And then on the server, there's tons of choices. I don't know what you guys develop in a particular language. You probably each have different things that you like the best, but I'm partial to Node.js, which is just JavaScript on the server. And so I use also a database called MongoDB, which is JavaScript in the database. So I kind of went from Microsoft all the way to now I just do raw JavaScript everywhere, all the way from the back to the front end, and I love it. And so that's kind of why I went on to start at Adobe. But I need to back up a little bit, because right after high school, I went to Newmont University. Any of you guys know Newmont? It's in South Jordan, just over the hill. Newmont it was a startup school right at the time. It was actually called North Face University until they got sued by North Face clothing company. And then they changed it to Newmont. And it was a high-speed course. I was going to graduate in 2 years instead of 4 with my bachelor. And I started in doing all the Microsoft development, C#, that kind of stuff. And I was doing really good and reading ahead of my classes and stuff like that. But I started straying away from my classwork and stuff because I would pick things that I liked and I'd start a project. I don't know why I work that way, but that's just the way I do it. The best way I learn is to start something. And so I would start these projects, and I started getting clients for a few of my little projects that I was doing. And before I knew it, I was actually working full-time in addition to going to school. And I eventually decided that I was paying for my education, paying for stuff that I was just doing on my own, because I wasn't even going to my classes anymore. I was just reading books and doing what I felt like doing. And a class here or there, like my SQL Server class, I think I failed, even though I totally rocked SQL Server later on my own. But I just decided it wasn't worth it. So I had to learn how I worked a little better. And obviously you guys are much better at this whole situation than I am. And be glad, because I'm about to tell you guys about lots of hurdles I had to overcome because I didn't go the extra year and get my bachelor degree. Because I went and I started my own company. It was called ChevTech Web Solutions. And I just did web development for small businesses all around Utah County and Salt Lake. And it was fun, but I didn't own a business, I owned a job. I had to wear all the hats. I had to chase clients for money. I had to haggle with them when I said it was done and they said it wasn't. That kind of stuff it was rough. And it's nice being in the corporate world and having all that stuff taken care of for you so you can focus on what you love. I wanted to be in control of everything because I'm very particular about the way I like code done and stuff like that. So that's why I started my own company. Eventually, though, the economy recession hit, and my target market was not the most sustainable. Small business owners don't really want to shell out a lot of money, when they're hurting, just for a small web presence. And so, I kind of had to rethink what I was doing. And also, at the same time, I was going to get married very soon. And you guys can imagine how my wife was not very happy to find out that paychecks were never guaranteed. I had to chase them down if I didn't get paid, or if the client decided that they just weren't satisfied and didn't want to pay me or something like that. We'd have to muddy through that water. So I decided to go look for a job in the corporate world. And keep in mind, at the time, my attitude was a lot different than it is now. I was very nervous about that prospect. I didn't graduate college, so I thought I was just going to get looked down upon everywhere I went. And it's true, I did a lot. In a lot of places I went, they wouldn't even talk to me, because without a bachelor degree, they just, they'll just throw your application in the trash sometimes. And but I kept doing it. I just was determined that I'm going to have a family soon. I'm going to have a wife, and we want to get a house and that kind of stuff. And so I went and just applied everywhere. I applied for like 2 months straight at every place I could think of. And I did everything I possibly could to demonstrate my abilities. And that's the one thing I will let you guys know, is if there's one thing you can do outside of just having good grades and getting your degree and having a portfolio, is to do something that stands out. Do something it doesn't even have to be technically amazing. It can just be something that looks cool, that catches someone's eye, and lets them know that you're really thinking about the way things work. And so what I did was, I was really fond of terminals, like command prompts, that kind of stuff, and I didn't know anything about them. I hadn't even used a Linux machine for more than, a few days at this time. And so my exposure to command prompt was Windows command prompt, so you can imagine how atrocious that is. Because the Unix and Linux command prompts, or the terminals, are obviously way better and way more powerful, because those operating systems are geared more towards developers, so that's where kind of the focus went. And so I liked that stuff. I really liked command-based workflows because I could work a lot faster just by hammering out as many commands as possible. It takes some memorization and stuff to get going, but once you're used to it, it's so much better. So what I did was I created a command line for the web that's just all JavaScript based and does WebSocket communication with the server. And I could actually run commands on my server and stuff all through this web interface. And it was not that impressive as far as the technical functionality of the thing, but it looked cool. And I had a resume that typed out character by character in the browser, and just they would type commands to view the different sections of my resume and stuff like that. And this was all happening in just HTML and JavaScript, so no Flash, no me piping STD in and STD out on the server to the browser or any of that crap. So it wasn't like there was a real terminal on the back end. It was just web stuff, which is what I wanted them to see. And so that's how I got my job. I got my first job in the corporate world at here in Orem at a place called Class Enterprises, KLAS. And there's some awesome people there. But what they do is they're like J.D. Power and Associates for medical software. So I don't know if you know what J.D. Power Associates are, but they would gather data. Class gathers data on, they call hospitals and gather data from patients and doctors and stuff like that on the software that they use. And so then, because the only option that healthcare providers have when they're trying to buy new equipment or new software is basically the vendor's marketing line. They only have the vendor to tell them, what software is better than another one, which is obviously not very good. So they provide an unbiased third-party resource for those types of things with commentary from the people who actually use it. So I got a job there in their IT department, and they have two applications, a front-end one and an internal one. And so the front-end one is their public-facing, what their customers see. So if you're a healthcare provider and you want to get a report on some piece of software, then you could go and download that from their public-facing website. And then on the back end was the big beast of a web app that we had to maintain with where all the employees did their work. So all the employees would log in there and just make phone calls, gather data, yada, yada, yada. And so I had maintained these two web applications, but the big hurdles I had to overcome when joining the corporate world for me were a few things. I didn't know some things that I didn't even think about on my own. And had I gone to school, I'm sure you guys probably think about source control, yeah? You have to work with teams and stuff like that, so I'm sure you're used to Git or at least Subversion or something like that. I had no exposure to it because I only was in college for a little bit and we didn't really get into a lot of team projects. And after that, I worked on my own for a long time, so I didn't even bother learning about source control. I knew how to do a lot of stuff, but I didn't know how to commit my code. And so I had to teach myself a few of those types of things, those basic teamwork type of abilities. But then after I learned that, I realized I knew more than I thought I did once I joined a team and everything. And I started to get my feet wet and get used to doing what I was doing, and I really started to enjoy it. But then I started to notice the problems with working for a company who doesn't ship software as a product, because it's a lot of office politics, a lot of back and forth between the tech department and the rest of the company, just trying to hammer out. I don't know if you guys have seen. You guys know what college humor is? Have you seen very many college humor videos? They did one called "Can you draw 7 red lines?" And you guys should all look this up after after this, because it's exactly like what it was working with the marketing department at my old company. It was trying. They wanted in the video, the little college humor video, they tell the guy, the expert, the developer, to draw. He's an expert at drawing red lines, and so they tell him they need 7 perpendicular red lines, and he has to draw them with some with blue ink and some with transparent ink. And when they ask him why can't, they're just getting mad at him and more mad at him. And when they ask him why can't we do this, he's like, geometry, and they're like, just ignore it. And that's exactly how I felt working with our marketing department. So, and it's just because the company didn't understand software. They understood, what our company did, which was make reports and ship reports. And so we shipped, the people that come to our website would download little PDF reports, and that's it. They would just view those. We'd have no insight into how far they got through the report, what they liked about the report. We entirely depended on going back to the user and asking them what they thought. That was our only form of feedback, which in the 2000s, that's silly. And so my team, I kind of guided my team towards the idea that we needed to bring all that stuff online. And so we created an online report system, which was just awesome, because then we could suddenly see everything the users were doing, every time they clicked something, every time they navigated around the report. And plus the reports were just cooler, because they weren't just a straight scroll from top to bottom. You just click through the different sections and pages of the report. So that's kind of my experience working in the corporate world. And after that big project, I decided that it was time to move on and find something different, a little more geared towards my skills. And I just don't like drama and office politics and stuff like that. So, but I do like steady paychecks and benefits. So I didn't want to go back to work for myself. And so I went around and I applied to a bunch of places, and I didn't even apply to Adobe. They just found me through my blog, which if you guys want to check it out, it's codetunnel.com. And if you ever want to email me, it's just alex.ford@codetunnel.com. I probably should have wrote that up on a board or something. Yeah, so they found me through my blog and just some stuff I've done on GitHub, and they found my resume that I took all that time to put together. Go ahead. Yeah, it's just codetunnel.com, C-O-D-E and then tunnel, T-U-N-N-E-L. And I just post whatever I feel like up there, but it's always code related, and lately it's all Node.js related. So if you like JavaScript, you'll probably like following my blog. So they found me through there and they contacted me, but it's kind of a funny story how Adobe found me, because I was just looking around at other places and I didn't even bother applying at Adobe for several reasons. One, I didn't realize they did anything with the web. I thought Adobe was Photoshop and that's it, so I didn't even bother. And then two, because I didn't think that they would hire me, to be honest. I just always, for some reason, felt like, because I didn't have that degree, kind of an insecure thing. I just never really felt like I could go apply to the big players and stuff like that. But I decided that when they contacted me and said they wanted to interview me and stuff, I decided that I would take a chance and do it, and that's all she wrote. That's where I'm at now. So right now I work on the front-end development team for Adobe Analytics, and I don't know, have you guys heard of Omniture? So Omniture is the product that we work on now, but it's not called Omniture anymore because Adobe bought them out in 2009, I believe. And so it's now called just Adobe Analytics. I think internally we call it Site Catalyst, which is what Omniture called it. And it's a lot of fun. It's an old app, so it's an interesting working on a legacy app that's old PHP code and lots of old JavaScript and stuff like that. But it's a lot of fun. And I think that just the best way you could possibly be at these places is to be yourself. Be outgoing, be genuine, and just make sure that you put a spotlight on the things that you do and make them look good. Because I know as a developer, if you guys aren't designers like me, then you have a tendency to build cool stuff but not make it look very pretty. and that's one of my biggest flaws, is I've always built lots of cool stuff but never made it look pretty at all. And to anybody that doesn't do what I do, it just looks like crap. They don't care. They don't care about all the tech that you put into it and stuff. And you have to get through some of those people before you get to the people that actually know what to look for. Because some of those people just want to see cool stuff, cool examples of you using whatever technologies they have on their little bulleted list for their job description. They want to see you using XML and HTML and stuff like that. And so it's cool to put together presentations that are just kind of polished. They don't have to be super technically amazing. It's way better if you just do something that's a little cool, like has like a little gimmick to it that just makes it stand out, but then is entirely polished. I know that one guy that I really liked that we interviewed, he came into into class, my old job, and he showed us a resume that he put together, that it was all made out of slides. It was a slide library that was built on the client in JavaScript, and it was all wired up with WebSockets to some server. So he had us all get out our devices while we were sitting there interviewing him and go through his portfolio, and he walked us through his portfolio on his device, and just everything changed in real time as he was going through these slides and showing us stuff. So it was really cool. We ended up not hiring him because he got another offer that he ended up accepting, but it was kind of cool to see that kind of stuff. We probably would have hired him just because he was outgoing, he was genuine, he didn't just hand us our resume and then meekly sit there and just kind of wait for us to be like, give us our judgment on him. he was like, no, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at. You can either hire me or I'll go find someone else. That's kind of his attitude. And it was refreshing because most people come in just kind of like waiting at your mercy, waiting for you to tell them whether or not, you need them or not. And so it was cool. I don't really have anything else. I don't know if I'm probably boring some of you guys, so I'll let you guys ask some questions. Do you guys have any questions about what I do at Adobe or anything like that? Or what are you more interested in talking about? Go ahead.
So you said you were working on a legacy program. What exactly does it do again?
So it's basically like enterprise level Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is, if you've ever used it, just for tracking your web statistics. You throw a little snippet of code in your application in JavaScript, and then it reports back to Google servers, and then you can access all that data. And obviously Google's really good at gathering lots of that data. Their product is free and stuff, but it's a lot simpler than ours. What Omniture created and what we maintain and add to is a lot bigger, and it has a lot more metrics and a lot more configuration on the client. So we even have a team that goes to a lot of our big clients, like Walmart is one of our big clients, and goes and sets all that stuff up for them. So because it's just it's pretty complicated. They kind of train their team and stuff like that.
So it's analytics on like user website.
Yeah.
Exactly
Like Walmart.com would be Walmart, what Walmart uses Site Catalyst for.
does the analytics for Walmart.com, and then you can show them the report, hey, this is what the user is clicking on, this is not.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, and they have a lot. It gets a lot more complicated than that too. Like for instance, when Michael Jackson died, we have, I don't know if you guys have been to the Adobe building, but you should come check it out. Anybody can come check it out, by the way, anytime. And there's a lot of public areas that you can walk around in and check out. But they have this one room that's called, what's it called? I think it's called the NOC, N-O-C. I forget what that stands for, but what they have is this wall of giant HD monitors, and they sit there and they watch. There's this giant globe that's spinning around on like four or six monitors in the middle, and it's just this giant globe, and they have all these statistics pointing to different areas of the globe, and they're just tracking like all sorts of different products, our own products, and just our servers, like all that kind of stuff is just kind of monitored in this room. It's mostly probably for show because it's all in a glass room and it's all right there at the front of the building, but it's still really cool to look at. And then they've got like Twitter feeds up and all sorts of social media stuff up there. And so like when Michael Jackson died, like just everything went crazy up there, and so like everyone's just like watching what's going on in the NOC just when big social events happen, and so. It's kind of cool, but yeah, that's exactly what Site Catalyst does, is just gather that same data, but on our clients, not our own services. I'm actually not in charge of anything yet. I just started there at the end of October, and so I'm still getting my feet wet, still getting used to kind of the way things work around there, but I love it. Working for Adobe is a breath of fresh air. Because I've worked for several smaller places between class and Adobe, and I really it's nice to work for a place that understands how to ship software and what can and can't be done. They don't ask us to draw 7 perpendicular red lines, so that's good. Anything else? Go ahead.
This one's kind of just more casual, but I mean, what does your typical routine consist of in a day of work?
That's a good question. So I'm actually just finally starting to settle into a routine because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was used to working in Visual Studio, coming from Windows development everywhere, and so now I'm working in PHP and JavaScript and stuff like that. So I'd done that on the side, and I love JavaScript and stuff like that, but Visual Studio was fine for JavaScript. And now that I'm not working in Windows anymore, I had to kind of totally retool my daily workflow. So what I have now is they gave me a MacBook Pro, which I think I told you earlier how I dropped it the very first day I got it. So I had to get a case for it. It has a big dent in it. But anyway, I have my MacBook Pro, and when I get to work in the morning, the first thing I do is check email. I used to get email on my phone, and I just can't stand it anymore. So I got rid of that, and I just decided that if there's an emergency, they'll call me. Because I'm supposed to be available pretty much any time, but we only usually work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. But if something happens and something hits the fan, then we have to be available. But So I got rid of email there. So that's the first thing I do is I check email in the morning. And then the next thing I do is I log into our issue tracker, which is Jira. I don't know if you guys have used Jira, but it's just a simple issue tracker that lets us log tickets and resolve them and communicate back and forth on certain issues. Because the company's huge. That may not be something that you're used to. It wasn't something I was used to. There's tons of people, and it's not just that building alone. There's 1,200 people, but that's just that building. And once you're inside the network, once you're in the issue tracker and all that stuff, it's all of Adobe. It's not just that building.